rejoins me. Bاسم, great to see you.
Great to see you too.
Finally in London,
Yes.
my home city, finally. Extraordinary that it's been a year. When you think back to that first interview that we did, that 23 million people watched around the world, and I still get asked about it all the time. Just take me back to how you were feeling then. It was so, in the immediate aftermath of October the 7th, Israel's response was coming very hard at the time. What was in your mind at the time when you did that interview and the way you conducted it?
I was very scared. I was advised by my managers and agents not to do the interview because I could lose my career. And I just took it because, and I actually, as a matter of fact, your producers asked me a couple of times and I said no because,
Really?
and then I said like I had to do it.
I want to play, just for those who haven't seen it, there aren't many, but let's take a look at some of that first interview.
Those Palestinians, they're very dramatic. Israel killing us. But they never die. I mean, they always come back. You know, they're very difficult to kill, very difficult people to kill. I know because I'm married to one. I tried many times, couldn't kill her.
I mean, there's a dark humor there, and I understand why, because...
No, it's not dark humor. I try to get to her every time, but she uses our kids as human shields. I can never take her out. I really applaud Israel for doing one thing that no military force in the world does. Because I heard Ben Shapiro and I heard Ron DeSantis, and they said, Israel is the only military force in the world that warns civilians before bombing them. I mean, how fucking cute. That is so nice of them. Because with this logic, if Russian troops started warning Ukrainians before bombing their houses, we're cool with Putin, right? I mean, okay, Habibi, you have warned them, go invade, it's fine, you have done your job.
It was a brilliantly devastating technique you used in that interview, which took me a while to work out what you were doing and why you were doing it. It was very powerful, resonated with many people very closely. Where do you think we are with this war now? And in fact, not just the war, obviously, in Gaza, but the wider war that's raging now in Lebanon, the threats against Iran and so on, the whole thing.
I mean, Israel is defending itself, right? I mean, that's what the Western media is telling us.
They would say they are.
Yeah, and I want to buy into it. I'm trying to convince my
Can
friends.
you buy into any of their logic that they believe they are defending themselves?
Okay.
Do you believe them that they believe that?
Let's put that on the test. So if Israel is defending itself, it's defending itself against an imminent danger, like an existential threat. I don't understand if, for example, Macron would announce that he will impose an embargo in Israel's arms, and then Israel goes and bombs the French oil facilities in Lebanon. How is that defending themselves? There's like a group of American doctors who were in Gaza and came back, and they reported seeing tens of children with sniper shots in their heads and necks. How is that defending themselves? Just a couple of days ago, we saw a little kid being shot by a drone. His family came to help him, and then they were all killed. How is that defending itself? I mean, I hear it, but I just don't see it.
But do you believe that fundamentally Israel believes it is acting in self-defense?
Israel can believe whatever they want. I'll tell you a story that actually can tell you exactly how Israel... I'm from Egypt, you understand this? You don't know this, right?
Yeah.
April 1970, there was an attack of an Egyptian school in the middle of Delta, 100 kilometers from where my parents were born. It's called Bahr al-Bahr. On that day, Israel bombed a school, killing 30 students. Now, what was so interesting going back in history, this was the headline of the New York Times of the day. And it says 30 pupils in Egypt said to die in raid. Said to die, the passive voice. Which raid? Who did the raid? We don't know. And then you read it. This is Moshe Dayan. He was the defense minister of Israel at the time. He said the target had been a military structure that had been photographed from air both before and after the raid. What could have happened here was irresponsibility of high orders from the Egyptians that they set aside a floor or some room for civilian purposes such as a school. Now, do you believe that? You don't, right? It's ridiculous. And the fact is that the New York Times then, same as the New York Times there, covering for it. But there was one thing that caught my attention. They said no mention was made of the use of napalm in the attack. I said, why would we have such a disclaimer? It's because 3 months ago, Israel bombed a civilian metal plant, killing 70 workers with napalm. So this, when I hear the IDF, they're liars. And I'm sorry to say, but they are.
Do you categorize what Hamas has been doing, particularly on October the 7th, what Hezbollah did within hours of October the 7th and carried on for the next year, what the Houthis have done, a lot of it orchestrated by, doubtless, the Iranian regime. Do you categorize that as resistance, as freedom fighting? Or are there elements of all those groups who are genuinely terrorist in their thinking?
Well, someone's a terrorist is other one's.
Yeah, but how you categorize it.
How I categorize it? I mean, like I'm an American citizen. Of course, I don't want to come back and find the FBI raiding my house. So yes, of course, they're terrorists.
Do you believe that?
Well, at the advice of my lawyer, I would say
Well,
that they're terrorists.
I don't think you'd be banned from going back to America
You
if you said
think?
they were terrorists.
You know what happened to Scott Ritter? He was the former UN inspector of nuclear weapon in Iraq.
He's a convicted paedophile.
Yeah, but like when he was raided a few months ago, it was because he was talking against Israel. Asa Winstanley, he was a British journalist in London, and his house was raided just last week because he talked about Israel. And this is actually, Pierce, what I like about you is that you are a fierce warrior against cancel culture, right?
Yeah.
If you cancel people for their opinion, we're not living in a free world anymore, right?
I totally agree.
So, for example, you have Robert Saleh, who was the coach of the NFL Jets. He wore like a small Lebanese flag, and he was cancelled. I mean, I don't know. It's interesting. I came to America, and I was so happy that I can speak about anyone I want, and then suddenly it's like, oh, we can do whatever you want, unless if it's like Israel.
It is. I mean, it's tangible to me when I go to America, far more than it is in the UK, for example. The support for Israel is pretty rock solid in terms of their political class, in terms of much of the media, if not all of the media. It's more tangible in America than it is in most other countries.
Yeah.
Including here.
Yeah.
A lot more criticism of Israel here than there is in America.
Yeah, and yet you have Israel having a crazy control on the political apparatus, whether in America or in here. I mean, 13 out of 25 of the labor cabinet here are funded by Israeli lobbies. 126 out of 355 MPs are funded by Israel. I mean, out of those 13 members of cabinet is the prime minister himself, his counselor, his deputy, the home secretary, the foreign secretary, and the secretary of the treasury, who oversees the arms shipments to Israel. So I don't understand why. I mean, I think we should talk about that more about anything, because that is actually what gives Israel the cover for what they're doing.
My take on Israel's government is that Netanyahu, to get back into power, aligned himself with some very hard right-wing people who've spoken in a very genocidal language about what they really want to do with Gaza and Palestinian people, and that he should go and they should go, and there should be new leadership in Israel, but that there should also be no place in power or government going forward for a group like Hamas after what they did on October the 7th. Would you agree with me?
Well, I'm not a Palestinian, so I cannot really...
What's your view?
Well, what's my view? Oh, yeah, I understand the view of... Well, there's two things about it. First of all, when you say that Netanyahu and Smotrich and Ben Gvir should go, it's as if as the rest of the Israeli political scene is peaceful. As a matter of fact, more than 90% of Israelis in a poll said that they should do more in Gaza. Over 70% of Israelis said that they should actually stop the aid, the humanitarian aid in Gaza. But let's talk about how, yeah, I understand the thing. Like, if you gave them a state, I mean, I have to be fair. I know that a lot of Arabs will hate me for saying this, but like, yeah, terrorism has been actually going in the Middle East for a very long time. I mean, do you remember the bombing of the King David Hotel? 92 British soldiers were killed. The bombing of the Cairo Haifa train, over 200 soldiers, British soldiers killed. The assassination of Volker Bernadotte or Lord Moyen, all done by Israeli Zionist militias. They were the terrorists, and they were rewarded of having their own state. So I don't understand the double standard. As a matter of fact, one of the people who were in these terrorist attacks was Isaac Shamir, and he was on a terrorist list, English terrorist list, and he couldn't come to London until he became a prime minister. But to be fair, the Israeli government at the time, 1949, have actually declared the Stern gang as a terrorist group, and they arrested two of them. and they gave them very, 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 very severe sentences, 8 and 5 years, and then they were released.